Welcome to the next edition of What's in a Game NBA podcast. And we have a lot of NBA to be reacting to because we're going to talk about DaRon Holmes being drafted to the Nuggets. Trey Alexander's just been signed to the Nuggets as well. And Reggie Jackson has been dumped. We're going to go through some hits and misses in the draft, as well as talk some KCP and the CBA. Don't go anywhere. All right, let's get into this episode. I'm Will Jones.
I'm Grace Jean.
This is Grace Jean, as always. So I would ask you how you are, but I know how you are because you are frazzled, just as I am, where we spent a half an hour trying to figure out if we got anything for Reggie or if we just traded 3 seconds just to dump his salary, which is what the Nuggets did. So how are you handling all this?
So today's Thursday. We're recording this right after day 2 of the NBA draft, after the second round. And a lot has happened since our last episode in the NBA, and a lot has happened for the Nuggets in the last 20 hours or so, and especially in the last 45 minutes. So we're just trying to figure some of this stuff out, and I'm definitely more frazzled than I would like to be because I do a lot of pretty extensive planning for each show.
Yeah.
So when news hits 45 minutes before, actually not before we're supposed to record, 15 is where we're supposed to record, and then I spend the next at least half an hour trying to just get the details, and then more news starts coming out.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely throws things off a bit, but it'll be interesting to work through this episode with you today, Will.
Yeah, we planned to film this episode after the second round of the NBA draft. Little did we know that the Reggie Jackson trade would happen in the middle of it. We didn't even trade into the second round to pick anybody. It was just a straight up move. But the news about KCP opting out also got released right before that. So, I mean, that was not a surprise. We knew that was going to happen. But I'm keep wondering if those are related in some way where maybe there's some discussions with KCP going on right now or something like that. I don't know, but
We should probably put a little bit of the timeline out there for context, because we were going to talk about the Nuggets first round draft pick DaRon Holmes, and after the pick was made, there was a short little press conference with Calvin Booth, the GM of the Nuggets, and he made some very specific comments about KCP because he was asked about what's going on with his pending free agency and how willing the team was to go into the second apron, etc. Those comments set Twitter ablaze because he basically said, after listening to it a couple of times over, it's not that he was trying to be, I don't think he was trying to be mean. I think that Cal is just a very direct person, and he effectively said, yeah, we're going to miss KCP, but I have confidence in Christian Braun's ability to step into that starting role, and we're going to have to move forward if KCP doesn't want to stay, because that's the nature of free agency and whatever. And that's what he said, right? And that's the charitable reading of it. I will say my critiques of particularly the part where he's like, oh, it's all about this is the nature of unrestricted free agency and blah blah blah, and I'm like, yeah, but you could always just offer more money, right?
mhm.
So it is unrestricted free agency, but especially these days, very scarcely do I see a player reject the offer of more money to
Yeah.
go somewhere else for less money, right? But he's right. KCB can go wherever he wants to go. So those were his comments last night. Then we got
Yeah.
the news today. It was right before the draft started, I believe, maybe an hour or so before, that we got the news about KCP intending to decline his player option. And I pointed out that it was kind of early because, as we stated in our off-season preview episode, we're recording this on June 27th. He has until June 29th to decide to either opt in or opt out of his player option. The most likely scenario, whether he was going to stay or go, was that he'd opt out. There were some very rare, in my opinion, scenarios where he could maybe opt in and the Nuggets could extend him off of that number. But the Nuggets could always extend him even if he opts out. And obviously, if he opts out, he can explore free agency with other teams, especially teams like potentially Magic or the Sixers that are willing to offer him more money up front. So that's like the backdrop to this news about Reggie being traded, not
Hmm.
not for 3 second-round picks, but with 3 second-round picks in what I mean. There's no other way to read this deal than as a salary dump.
Hmm.
He got sent to the Charlotte Hornets, right?
I know it's kind of funny
Yeah,
because we were waiting for the Reggie option, and he opted in, which
he
was
opted
what
in.
everyone
Yes,
expected.
that is something else that happened
Um,
since our last show for sure.
yeah, and there were Nuggets fans who were frustrated because they don't want Reggie on the team anymore, which is fair. But I thought, you calm the Nuggets fans down. We need him to opt in to either put in a trade or do something. I didn't know that we were just going to go out and dump his salary. So, but that's what they did. And we'll see if that little bit of wiggle room can keep us under an apron, the second apron specifically, because there's no way we'd be under the first. So, yeah, we already have such a lack of ball handlers. We've been saying it on the show, and now we're another one down. Not that Reggie was the one that we wanted, because we knew that he didn't mesh well with Jamal, and we were looking for some other skills. But it really sucks to lose him without knowing what other plans Booth has. And obviously, Booth gave
Jalen
comments.
Pickett.
Yeah, Jalen Pickett. This does pave the way, but I just don't think of him as like a realistic option. But that's the thing, is Booth has his idea of what he wants, and I just don't feel that great about it right now in terms of, let's just let CB start and then Pickett be the backup point guard. I mean, how do you feel with that? Do you feel comfortable with that? I mean, there's things about it I like. Nothing's perfect, but I would rather alternative options.
I actually I have no problem in the kind of larger scheme of things with Pickett being the backup point guard if there is at least another veteran secondary ball handler on coming off of the bench. But
Yeah.
that's not the case right now. So for example, if we had like an Oubre or a Bogdan Bogdanovic also off the bench, that would be fine. And it's not even just because, I mean, Pickett is going to be effectively a rookie because he played, what, 100 minutes last season total and mostly in garbage time. But I don't know about what his ceiling is going to be in terms of being a ball handler in the playoffs. And as of right now, because Reggie is gone, we have two ball handlers on this team, including Jalen Pickett, that are on standard contracts, not counting Trey Alexander, as you talked about, who's on this two-way deal. And the players who are on standard contracts are the ones who can play in the playoffs. I don't know if the plan is to get someone like we've talked about, like a Chris Dunn or a DeLon Wright on a minimum deal that can be that secondary ball handler off the bench. I have no idea.
Yeah, that's
And
what I'm
as
thinking and
little as I
hoping for,
understood
but
about where the front office was trying to go in terms of trying to bolster that ball handler depth, I am more confused than ever now because as much as I had a feeling that Reggie would not be on the roster next season to make room for Jalen Pickett to give him that runway. But I thought that his salary was going to be used in a trade, but instead they went the route of this salary dump, spent 3 second-round picks to do it, and now I have no idea what their plans are
yeah. I had just
to
tweeted,
address.
I was just tweeting, like, I hope we keep KCP. Like, we could sign him for something and maybe still be under the second apron without that contract. But otherwise, I'm not really sure what the plan is. It still does clear up a room if you do, like, sign a free agent or whatever.
The problem
But
is we're not a team we're not under the salary cap.
yeah.
So we're operating in free agency exclusively to sign free agents. We're operating exclusively under exceptions. The
Hmm.
exceptions that we have access to as a team are the veteran minimum exception, as we've talked about in the past, which is going to be available at all levels, even if we were to go over the second apron. And if we're under the second apron, which we are, seems like targeting to do by this Reggie salary dump, we have access to the taxpayer mid-level exception. Now, my issue is if this was not done to clear space under the second apron to extend KCP while still staying under the second apron, and KCP leaves, we have access to the taxpayer mid-level exception, but we would have had that anyway, even if Reggie was still on the roster. And in
Yeah.
addition to that, we would have also had Reggie's salary to either trade by itself or trade along other salaries like Zeke's or whoever in other deals And we would have had the second round picks to use as sweeteners, because obviously you're not like trading Reggie for a better player straight up, right? Like you're going to have to include something else in that deal. That is no longer an option. We have the singular salaries that are available, and maybe we try to aggregate Zeke with one of the smaller things, like maybe Hunter Tyson or whatever. But I have reasons to think that that is not at all in the plans. And we don't have those second round picks to act as sweeteners in case we wanted to dump a different contract like Zeke's. That's not an option either. So what I'm saying is that if this is not done in the service of re-signing KCP, all it did was limit our flexibility going forward in this offseason. There's nothing that this helped us to do actively other than maybe extend KCP, because everything else we would have already had access to if KCP left.
Yeah, and it would really, if they do get under the second apron for this next season, that's pretty much all we get, because the players are going to get more expensive and will be going over eventually. But it would be good to have flexibility in the year with one season under our belt, under the second apron, if we're able to do that, and if that's how the Nuggets feel they want to go forward.
Also, if let's say that KCP decided to walk, they could have tried to dump this salary at any point. If they were willing to trade 3 second round picks to dump a $5 million expiring salary, that could have been done at any point. Now, I knew they wanted to move Reggie in order to create runway for Pickett. It seemed like the front office is incredibly high on him and really didn't like that Malone didn't give him much run last year. But I thought we would at least be able to use that salary in some other positive deal to address the other issues on the roster. That's obviously no longer an option. And even if it wasn't an option by the end of the offseason, we could have done that deal then to try to, like, I don't know, continue.
That's why I'm like keyed in on the timing of this.
Yeah.
Hoping it's the KCP related move.
No, I agree.
Really quick though, obviously I was pretty mad at that Reggie contract heading into last season. Then he played pretty well as backup for Jamal. And Nuggets fans and the community was pretty high on him and grateful that he did pretty well in Jamal's absence. Obviously, it wasn't perfect, but he was pretty serviceable. Now we're at a point, obviously, he didn't play that much in the playoffs, and we saw how those lineups with Jamal and him playing at the same time were rough on the defensive end. Are you surprised that the value of Reggie was this low, where it was like you had to package that much just to get off of him?
My thing is that I don't even know if it was that low. I think part of what's happening right now, so we moved him to Charlotte, and I tweeted this out. There's a few teams that have this cap space and they're not using it to like sign free agents. There's not Philly or Orlando that are like teams that are trying to be competitive right now, but teams like Detroit, Charlotte, maybe Utah, although I haven't seen any deals to Utah yet, they could turn into one of these teams that wants to use their cap space as a destination for other teams wanting to dump salaries in order to get assets back. So in this case, Charlotte is taking on Reggie's salary for those picks. Now, I don't know what kind of competition there was basically for like parking your car in that garage.
Yeah, but that's where they
or,
settled
like,
3 picks. It's like
that's the thing is I don't know. I mean, we're going to talk about this when we talk about the actual first rounder DaRon, but he had to move up in the draft. Cal had to move up in the draft to get him. And I think he had good reason to think that he needed to move up. I had seen lots of reports about the usual suspect GMs that tend to have like the same taste in prospects as Cal being interested in DaRon. Kind of fills their needs. The picks that they had been most interested in had maybe been taken earlier. And the Bucks were going to go in the spot up. So Denver felt the need to move up to ahead of that so that they could get their guy. They did that. They spent 3 second round picks to do so. I think in like a normal, I don't know if it's like this is not a normal year and things are like that kind of transaction is maybe more expensive, especially because we happen to be dealing with the Phoenix Suns, who is incredibly desperate for assets. Maybe there was like a bidding war with Milwaukee who wanted to move up so that they could ensure that Denver didn't jump them. I don't know. We don't know everything that goes on behind the scenes, but I would have hoped they would only have to spend like 2 second round picks to move up in that situation, but they did spend 3. So I don't know if this is a case where it was the competition or the overpayment, because we've also seen other instances where I feel like Cal overpaid in,
Mhm.
let's say, like the deal to get Thomas Bryant, not last season, but the one before.
Yeah, the championship season.
Last year,
Yeah.
the championship season at the deadline, spent 2 second round picks to get Thomas Bryant in that
Mhm.
deal, and I'm like, in retrospect, it's like
Yeah. He
you
might be
kind
a
of got
little
fleeced
too
there.
loose with those second rounders.
And yeah,
Uh,
and now we actually have no second round picks left to trade.
yeah.
Ryan Blackburn pointed out we have one tradable pick for the rest of this season, and it's the 2031 first round pick. And then yeah, these three for Reggie. I really
Yeah.
like. I'm so. I feel like I normally have more coherent answers to give on these recordings, but I'm so like frazzled from just not having had adequate time to fully process everything that happened with the team
Hmm.
at once,
Yeah.
because it was the KCP opt out news came at like simultaneously, because I think Shams announced them basically back to back, with Jamal
Yeah.
is
The
expected
extension.
to sign his extension, which we'll talk about in like a couple minutes. That happened all right before the second round started. Then I'm watching all of these picks come in, and then middle of the second round of the draft, we find out about this Reggie news, and it does not help that Adrian Wojnarowski, who is he's just like manic to beat Shams to the punch. There was news that he put out, there was like some deal that Toronto made to, they sent Jalen McDaniels to the Sacramento Kings for Davion Mitchell. We're not going to talk about that deal in depth. They sent those two players to the Toronto Raptors for Jalen McDaniels, and Woj he tweeted out half of the deal. He tweeted out the Sacramento half of the deal. And I was like, oh, for what? And then like a minute or two later, he's like, and then like Jalen McDaniels, blah, blah, blah. Like, really? You're tweeting out halves of deals right now just so that you can beat Shams to the punch. So I mentioned that because in the case with this Reggie Jackson trade, he tweets out that the Denver Nuggets were trading Reggie for 3 seconds. Then I'm like, oh, are we trying to trade back into the second round of this draft? Because
Yeah.
we had traded our second round pick
That's what
as
I
one of the
thought.
three that Phoenix took for DaRon. So I was like, so what are we doing right now? Like, I was very confused. Everyone's trying to figure out what happened. And then Woj like edits the tweet, whatever, and like resends it out that actually, no, we're sending 3 second round picks with Reggie in what is a salary dump move. I was actually like, why is Charlotte paying 3 second round picks for Reggie? I guess expiring contracts are valuable, but apparently not. Right.
Yeah, I mean that's like we were including him in trades, like we were saying, and just speculating
In
what kind of
trades for ball
value.
handlers,
Yeah, what kind
that
of.
could potentially play in the playoffs.
Yeah, what can we get back for him? How's he going to be used? Like, I hope he opts in so we can use him for something at least. And then he opted in, and we lost 3 second round picks. So I don't know. We'll see how that goes. And we had been, talking about
And
the
if I'm
second
like, if nothing else,
apron.
he's an expiring contract.
Yeah, we had been talking about the second apron and aggregating salaries, and obviously Zeke and Reggie were two where that can add up to something. It was unlikely that was going to happen though, with the separate apron looming. So I wasn't counting on that, but at least you could trade them separately. It looks like maybe there just wasn't a market out there. Maybe people were just not going to want to trade any kind of asset for Reggie Jackson after the season that he had, which is still surprising to me. I think maybe someone would be like, hey, like he could be
Here's my
something for
thing
us.
is like, it's not really about him as a player. Like, that contract was more valuable to us clearly than it was to any other team, because we could have
Yeah.
at least used it as matching salary. And again, those second round picks are really, this has been the case since last summer. And a lot of NBA like writers and commentators have been pointing out that especially the expensive contending teams have been stockpiling these second round picks for use as kind of lubricant in
Yeah,
other
just
kinds of
movers.
transactions. Like we talked about, Cal moved up 6 spots in the draft to choose DaRon Holmes, and he used 3 second round picks to do it.
Yeah, which I
Um,
was fine with.
yeah, which I was fine. I was like, okay, we got our guy, and especially one of them was like super late in this draft. So I was like, we're probably not going to get who we want anyway. Maybe we can get, if we really really want them, we're contacting the agents and trying to get them as undrafted free agents. So it was really like 2.5 second round picks, but to use them in a salary dump. By the time this episode comes out, who knows? Maybe we get
Hmm.
news by like tonight that KCP is intending to sign an extension with the Nuggets. But that is the only thing that this would have been helpful for with respect to roster building. It's really funny because of all the scenarios that I contemplated with respect to KCP, the one I did not at all think of was maybe the Nuggets will try to keep KCP without him opting into the contract and trying to like finagle the margins of staying under the second apron. So he's opting out, and we're giving him a deal that's bigger than where the first year is bigger than the player option if should he have opted in. And then we try to dump other players to try to stand at second apron. That's not a scenario that I contemplated. I think I basically
Right.
thought about every other way that this could have gone. Like, if he leaves, what do we do with the enhanced flexibility? If he stays, what do we do with like more limited flexibility? If he stays, what do we do to get just a little bit more flexibility so that we can do some of the stuff we would have been able to do if he left? Not this.
Yeah. I would have been shocked if any individual out there predicted any scenario with Reggie that would have been correct. Even if it was like a trade, like, hey, I like this trade with Reggie, I still would have been like, wow, good for you. You guessed that. This one was definitely more wild than those proposals. So, yeah, it's funny going from DaRon Holmes, who everyone in Nuggets Nation knew that's the guy and that was the target. And, you know, there couldn't be a better pick to where like Malone and Booth could be like unified on a move. Like it's hard
I
to
mean, do
see
we know
both of them
that?
being
We don't know
mad.
how Malone
I just
feels
feel like
about any
how
of this, especially with the comments that we talked about him making about maybe trading our
the
first round
pick.
pick in this draft for a
Yeah.
veteran player, presumably, but instead potentially KCP's about to walk, and then we just salary dumped Reggie.
Well, with reports of the Nuggets maybe promising Duran and like the chance of him not being there, I think floating the idea of maybe trading it is a good idea potentially if there weren't good picks there. But obviously he
Yeah.
was there, and everyone's happy about that. I think that was amazing for us because I think he could have gone higher easily. We had to trade up to get him, so I would be shocked if Malone and Booth weren't aligned on that pick. I don't know how they are aligned on this Reggie pick because Malone
Because
was
Reggie
playing
was
Reggie. Malone,
Malone
yeah,
played Reggie a lot.
yeah. So if it's like some crazy, soap opera scenario where Malone really wanted to keep Reggie or thought they could use him to get somebody else because he just doesn't want to play Pickett or whatever, and
So
Booth,
here's my thing is there's no way that he wanted this, and I'll tell you
yeah,
why I know that. If he would have been fine with playing Pickett, then Reggie would still be on the roster because there'd be some understanding that that regardless of Reggie being there, Pickett is going to get runway. But clearly, the front office does not think that that would have been the case. So they had to move Reggie by apparently any means necessary. And my thing is, I always thought that Reggie would not, again, I didn't think Reggie would be here, but I thought that his salary, his expiring contract, would have been used as at least matching salary in some other deal that we moved to
mhm.
get another veteran player.
Yeah. Well, I just thought no matter what, Reggie was not going to be on the Nuggets next season. So I don't know what the internal discussions are. I'm not surprised that he's gone. It's just the manner in which he's gone that surprised me. But is there anything else you want to say about that? And otherwise, we can just move to Duran, talk
Yeah.
about something positive until
Yeah,
we'll
let's
circle
let's talk
back.
about something positive and something that we know a little bit more about because we don't know. This could be the first domino in some other move, or maybe there's some maneuvering that I am not aware of being an option to the team that has nothing to do with KCP being extended. I highly doubt it. Yeah, we'll just look out for that. But we can definitely move on to some more positive things.
Yeah, we were also happy to see that we traded up to the 22nd pick and selected DaRon Holmes from Dayton. It was a great move. We had previewed it on this show. Everybody who was in Nuggets media or who talks on Twitter, who has a channel, previewed DaRon Holmes. And thanks to CT Fazio for being on our last show and talking about him even more. He looks great. He sounded great. Grace sent me a good interview of him during the draft media availability that I retweeted out, and Nuggets Nation likes him because he really loves animals, similar to Jokic. He had such a funny answer. He was like, "I just walk around and look at animals. That's what my hobby is," and I just couldn't stop laughing at that. But yeah, I just am really excited thinking about how the Nuggets can specifically use his skills because I had seen some other scouting on him that talked about his passing and his dribbling, even though it doesn't look super fluid necessarily, like the way that he dribbles, but he still's like doing it and he's dribbling it from half court and attacking, and he has a spin move. A lot of people are like, that's not going to be anything that he's going to be doing. He's not going to be passing a lot. He's not going to be dribbling a lot. But I think with the Nuggets, if he is on that bench unit, it is going to be something that he can do because we do that a lot in our starting unit. He doesn't have to play like Jokic, obviously, because I think even he may be at the four and be more of like an AG type, which was definitely something I wanted to get your thoughts on. And I was trying to investigate a little bit as far as the Nuggets thinking that he will be in the four spot more than the five is what they're leaning
Right.
right now,
Yeah, I
which
was actually going to ask you
that
about
surprised
that
me because
very
I,
thing.
I definitely was thinking more of him as a five and and as a center who can like pass and post up. Even though I know he's like slightly undersized for that, I still had like faith he'd be fine just because he's really athletic, and like that's the thing I'm most excited about is just that he's super athletic, and we need more of that because that was an issue with the Wolves where they were just like kind of killing us with these athletes who were huge. I'm hoping because we had this whole thing with Zeke where it was like should he be a five or should he be a four, and I hope that doesn't become a thing with him. But I think whether he's playing some four or some five, whether it's with Jokic or non-Jokic minutes with the bench, that he has like a natural skill set that'll apply to both. And I don't know if it's like earlier on in his career, he's playing at a four and then he switches to a five, or it's just situation based. But either way, I'm hoping he can kind of like, if he needs to fill in for AAG, have those skills. And if he's filling in for Jokic, he has some of those skills. He doesn't have to be, the most amazing player ever. He's just coming in to spell them for in limited minutes. It would be awesome if he could get to a level where he could play in the playoffs next season when I could see that happening. But yeah, that's basically my thinking on like the four and five. But we'd have to sign another vet center to like really make me feel super comfortable about being at the four most of the time next season.
Well, we might still have Zeke on the roster by the time the
Yeah,
season starts,
I
so
know.
maybe they
Yeah.
both play 4.5 and both look better. Who knows? I think that it was interesting how much everyone who had been talking about him, not just Nuggets fans that were interested in who the Nuggets were drafting, but the rest of like draft Twitter talking about DaRon talked about him as a five in the NBA. And then we get to the post draft media availability with Calvin Booth, and he spends the entire time basically talking about DaRon as, yeah, no, I see him as like a four in the NBA for sure. Like he was very definitive about that. He
Hmm.
talked about some options where um, DaRon is playing next to AG and next to Jokic. So even like next to AG, you kind of picture a facsimile of that happening if we were to still have Zeke on roster by the time the season starts, and they're both kind of playing 4.5 that position. So maybe those lineups like rebound a little bit better. Maybe they like one is able to space and the other one's running delay actions or whatever it is handling in the case of DaRon. And he is so versatile, like we talked about in our um, Nuggets draft prospect preview, that like you said, he's not like amazing at any one thing, but he's really versatile and looks very comfortable in a variety of offensive situations. So there's more opportunities for fitting in different types of lineups playing with Jokic. He is a lob threat, but he can also be a spacer. Essentially, we don't know how good the 3-point shot's actually going to be at the NBA level, but he did end up shooting, I think, 39% from three his last season at Dayton. And I remember Cal mentioned during that media availability that the shot form reminds him of like Al Horford with a
Mm,
wide base, a very
that's true.
stable release, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, he shot really well from open, like wide open
Mm-hmm.
threes.
Which is the kinds he's
Obviously,
going to take. Like he's not going to
yeah,
be
I
taking
hope
like
so.
pull-ups and
Yes, but if those defenses are in rotation and they're getting good and they're running around like you've been saying, maybe they'll get out to him.
he
But
can
yeah,
also dribble, which is the nice thing.
that's
He can
true.
also attack a
There you go.
closeout, which is nice, right? He's not just a catch and shooter that doesn't know what to do when like when
Hmm.
a defender's got a good closeout
And I think
on
he'll be
him.
good against like a little bit smaller players doing that too, like
That's
especially.
right.
So
Yeah, I think
yeah,
that would be the case. So if he's playing even if he's playing four in starting lineups, he's still pretty like he's a pretty big for a four. He's a little bit taller than AG, probably weighs around the same, but he's not quite as muscular because he's got a lot of
yeah.
his mass is like in his legs. He's like a very like lanky. Kind of
Hmm.
reminds me in terms of like just the art the body archetype of like a skinnier like Miles Turner
Yeah,
actually. that kind of thing, where the center of gravity is a little bit higher. So definitely not like AG, but he's
Right.
just like a little bit bigger. So he will have opportunities to deal with smaller players for the most part, because there are like what, 3 teams in the league that have a 4 that's bigger than him,
Hmm.
or even his size.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
It's kind of wild to see those
Plus, he'll
highlights
be
of
playing
him.
against benches most of the time.
I think yeah, that he's gonna have to do the things that all rookies have to do, where they got to emphasize rebounding, they got to emphasize like hustling. I think the Dayton offense needed him to be more, doing the things that are higher up on the priority list of offensive responsibilities, like passing and just like having the ball in his hands a lot and posting up for
He had a
longer.
really high usage. It was like 30 something, I think, his
Right.
last season.
And that definitely will go down. Yeah, just like little things he needs to do, like focus on rebounding, which plays to his strength because he can dribble up the floor really fast, push the pace, just like Jokic does often when he's getting rebounds and looking ahead. I was looking at a shot chart though, and he definitely was weakest in that like from mid range in between to like under,
You
like
mean
right
like
in the
where
paint.
everybody's inefficient?
Yeah, but
Every like non-star player,
even
right?
his mid range jumper is pretty good. It was mostly
In
like
terms
the
of the
like
form.
Yeah, and even like the
Okay.
percentage, but it's like the floater, like
Oh,
hook shot from a little bit further outside the
mm,
paint was a
like
little bit,
the short mid-range
yeah,
shots.
the shorter mid
Okay, we could
range were a
work on
little
those.
more rough, which I do think he's, maybe need to develop that, if especially if he's not going to be like a bigger bruising dude, if he's like more on the light, quick side, maybe he'll need to add something like that, like a floater. But otherwise, like I'm super excited for him, and he's great. And if he's gonna get like open looks on this team, like the Nuggets like to move the ball, if we can get back to that a little more, he'll get some open shots, open threes, open dunks. And then we haven't even talked about his defense, which is hopefully his rim protection gets even better, everything along those lines. But if he's playing the 4, who knows what that looks like on defense? He's going to be taking some bigger, quicker wing players, maybe that obviously Jokic wouldn't be guarding, stuff like that.
I'm more up on his defense if he's playing the 5 than the 4, to be
Yeah,
honest, because the switchability, I think, is maybe a little bit overstated, at least at first. Maybe he'll get better at it. He can switch out onto guards, but it's not going to be like, I wouldn't want it to be the first, option. It'll be
yeah.
interesting to I'm really excited to see what he looks like in summer league, even though it's
Mhm.
going to be against sort of first year NBA players and some G League players, etc. It's one of those things where I want him to look really, really good in that
Yeah,
setting, because it's
right.
still like another level to get to once he gets to actual NBA games. I do want to just sort of smooth some of the sentiments about him being like a potential AG replacement. I think
Oh yeah.
a lot of people were upset after we mentioned Calvin's comments about being comfortable with Christian Brown stepping into the starting lineup should KCP leave. And they're like, well, AG's next, all of this stuff. And I really hope AG's not next, because in my opinion, if he's gone, we're no longer a title contender, to be
Yeah, I
completely honest.
agree. Yeah.
AG, I think, is one of, if not the most switchable player defensively in the entire NBA, and like completely 1 through 5. I don't see DaRon even necessarily having that at his ceiling. Maybe that
Yeah.
changes. And that's really like AG's main value with Jokic. DaRon's not going to be an AG replacement just because he can catch lobs.
Yeah.
Um,
AG is way too unique. It's definitely selling him short to
yeah.
say something like that. Unless you're saying when AG and Jokic
He
are
said AG
retired.
2.0, and I'm like, nope, nope, not even that. That's not what it is. And I like DaRon a lot. Like we said, his versatility is very intriguing to me, again, because of all the lineups that he could fit into. And that plays into what we've talked about before with Malone, where, for all the sympathy that we can have for him in this situation where Calvin is giving him one of the youngest rosters in the NBA, I'm pretty sure we're going to be the youngest ones of any of the playoff teams next year. The starters need to be staggered more, regardless of if KCP stays or leaves. All of the bench players need to have more reps with Jokic so that they can become playoff ready, especially if there is, as it seems to be the case right now, no other options on this roster but to get these guys ready for playoff basketball. In order to do that, you have to get reps playing with multiple starters, especially Jokic, obviously. Yeah, so his versatility is gonna
Mhm.
I think help out in that, whether he's playing the 4 or the 5 or the 4.5, alongside like a Zeke.
The good thing is that like he can be played in different coverages, like on a pick and roll,
Yes.
whether he's in the 4 or 5. So it's like he could
Right.
get
I
a
don't know
little
about like dropping too much, especially like a deep drop, because he's
right.
not super tall. Like he's only a little bit taller than AG, for example. Though I've
Yeah.
seen AG be pretty effective, but AG's like a little bit like not scarier, but bulkier. And you're like, am I really going to challenge this guy at the rim? But like you said, very scheme versatile when he's playing, especially that 5 position, at least like when guarding a pick and roll. I like him in blitzes and hard hedges, especially because he really does know how to use his length.
Mhm.
I think it's actually like DaRon is gonna bring some interesting tools for the defensive
Yeah.
coordinators on staff with the Nuggets. We have lineups where it's like P. Watt playing the 4 next to Jokic. DaRon's a bit bigger than Peyton, although I think Peyton has a similar level of instinct for the ball. But if you have lineups where you can have Jokic with like if DaRon could maintain the level of shot blocking and rim protection that he did at the college level, playing the 4 next to Jokic, like those kind of lineups could be incredibly scary defensively. Like that's the kind of thing I'm more thinking about, and like the defensive playmaking side
Yeah,
more
exactly.
so than that just being solid. But you did allude to like, is he going to be ready to play in the playoffs next year? I'm not even sure that his offense is the thing I'm most worried about. Even if this like most of his skills are going to look more raw against NBA competition offensively, the thing that's going to get him on the floor in the playoffs is what got Christian on the floor in the playoffs in his rookie year, which is being a low mistake player. And because highlights and lowlights are just the compilations of like all the good things and then all the bad things, I don't actually know what his like mistake rate is going to be, especially as he's transitioning to the NBA level.
Mhm.
So that is what I'm going to be watching for most, because it's going to determine how much he can contribute to those playoff lineups in terms of the theoretical versatility. If he can't even stay on the floor because of the his frequency of mistakes. Although on a roster where there are no other veterans on the bench, or no veterans at all as of right now, maybe that won't matter. But
Yeah. Especially if CB is now going to be a starter.
CB is going to be the most. He's going to have the most minutes of any of the third year or younger players on the roster, obviously, right?
Mhm.
And if KCP stays, he will be the not the oldest, but I guess longest tenured player on the bench in terms of just minutes, and that's kind of scary. Like, again, unless they make another move. I guess Zeke is there, but has Christian played almost as many minutes as Zeke at this point, just because of all the start
Yeah.
stops with Zeke's
I might guess that he's
career?
played more.
That's
um,
actually that's interesting. I'll look that up
yeah,
so
we'll have
that
to
we have
find
it
that.
for our next episode.
Yeah, his floor is like high enough that he's going to be a pretty consistent and limit those mistakes. So I'm pretty hopeful. I'm very happy. I think he's going to be great, but it's just he's going to have to learn how much effort he's going to have to put forth on defense to make those defensive plays with playing with whoever it is with the bench to be in positions to make those plays as well. So it's not like it's a done deal that he's going to be a super success, but he has so many things that we need right now that even if he's just, we just need him to be that role player. Right now, I'm really happy with that pick.
I'm really excited about him. I know I don't like I was actually really, really excited, especially after we made the pick and it was like, oh,
Yeah.
but we made a deal with Phoenix, who I hate. But we got to screw
Oh,
over the
yeah.
Milwaukee Bucks, who I don't necessarily hate, but I know John Horst really likes the same kinds of players that Calvin likes. So I was very happy
Mhm.
that we got to pick DaRon Holmes. I was elated. Forgive my sort of more muted expression today. Everything else that's happened since the
Yeah.
pick was made
It's hard to like get
has
back in that
slightly shaded
mindset.
me a little bit about
I know.
everything else. But I am really excited about DaRon. He also seems to have a good head on his shoulders, like you mentioned with that interview. And I talked about in our last show how I like how he breaks down his own film. He seems like a basketball junkie, and he wanted to come to Denver. Like there were reports about, whether or not a promise was made, he was definitely shutting down workouts with other teams, including notably with the Milwaukee Bucks. I actually took a quick glance onto another draft live stream, and they before the pick was made, they were talking about the fact that DaRon refused their workout, and they were kind of salty about it. So that made me like him even more. Uh,
There you go.
but yeah, I'm
DaRon.
excited about DaRon.
I'm glad that everyone is aligned on that, even if there's lots of opinions on everything else surrounding the
Right.
Nuggets
I
right
think that
now.
it's funny because, yeah, everyone is pretty much aligned on like, we love this pick. We're very happy about it. Even if DaRon wasn't someone's like number one guy, he was on everybody's lists. Yeah. So at least there's that, and everyone's kind of been like fighting internally, like within themselves, because they're so happy about this pick and the fact that not that he was available where we wanted him at 28, but we moved up, got him, didn't get stolen by somebody else. But the other big piece of Nuggets internal news that we should get to is definitely the news about Jamal's extension, which I alluded to earlier.
Yeah, Jamal was finally extended. What was the number? It was
Well,
like 209 4 year or something around there.
so he hasn't been extended yet because
Yeah.
he's not actually extension eligible until July 6th, but it's a 4 year, $208 million, the max extension that they could offer. So was that $52 million a year effectively, and
Yep.
then each year it'll go up at some percentage of the cap. I wanted to talk to you about this because we asked both of our last two guests what they thought about the possibility of Jamal signing extension this summer, and there's two pieces to it. Are the Nuggets going to offer the extension, and is Jamal going to take it? Because everybody has their own incentives in all of this. So when we got this news, basically right before, I believe, the KCP opt-out news, I said, "Oh, that's interesting." Maybe try to pair something bad with something good. They knew that the KCP opt-out news was going to be out there, so like, oh, let's quickly let's try to get this together. What do you think of it from the Nuggets team side? The fact that they're offering this extension now.
Well, I mean, I think it's good from the Nuggets team side. I mean, you're offering him the max they could. Obviously, if they waited a year and offered it to him after another season and he played amazing, got an All-Star, All-NBA, that gives Jamal more money, which
Potentially. They don't have to
potentially.
offer the full Supermax, but
Oh, that's
everyone
true.
does.
But you would, yeah, they would.
But what if he didn't have a good season? What if he
He's
didn't make All NBA? What if he made All Star with numbers that are slightly better than he normally has, but not quite All NBA, and
right.
then played 90% of what he did in the playoffs during the championship run?
Yeah. Well, I think if you're the Nuggets, you gotta offer it, and if he wants to not take it and he wants to have a great contract year and whatever it is that he envisions for himself to nail down the contract that he ultimately would want, then he can go ahead and do that. I don't know exactly what he was weighing in his mind, whether he was because if he gets hurt again next season, that's not going to be good, right? So
That's not good for anybody.
yeah, so
Unless it's Jamal and he signs the contract now.
yeah, exactly. So I'm like, look, the Nuggets got to offer to him. I know Jamal has like a ton of confidence, so it's not like he's going out there like, oh, I might get hurt again and not play and then tank my value. Like I think he's thinking he's one of the best guards in the league, and he always has a chip on his shoulder. I don't think he looks at his game last playoffs and thinks he struggled because something inherently with his skill or his talent or the team. I think he knows that he wasn't 100% and he was ran into the ground. Even if that's not true, I'm sure that's what he thinks. So I'm just glad that they can get on the same page if the Nuggets are offering this and he takes it. Like, I want Jamal locked up. Obviously, you can trade people, but I wouldn't imagine that Jamal's going to be fine and play really well and continue his career with the Nuggets. And I mean, what he did in the finals is enough for me to want him to stay.
I think it's good to lock him up. I don't think it's like a good vibes thing to like force him to wait until next year's free agency. So I always thought that the team was going to offer this extension. I would have wanted to at least see him through the Olympics before I offer the extension in the summer. See if like, okay, is he actually serious about coming into the season conditioned this time? Like, is he going to be serious? Because we're about to offer a 4-year extension, so that would have locked him up for the next 5 years because he does still have one more year left on his contract before his player option. Obviously great for Jamal for all the reasons that I laid out in our episode with Zamora, where I said I think that Jamal should sign this. The whole like he's competitive, he's going to try to like get all NBA, all of that, and like he had an opportunity to do that, and he kind of didn't really play like it even when he was on the floor. And this just gives him some protection, some insurance, helps lock him up with the team that drafted him, the team that he won a championship with, the team where he gets to play with the best player in the world. I don't really have mixed feelings about it. I think I would still, if I didn't think that KCP was walking, although this news came right before this Reggie news. So I was really actually like excited about the Jamal extension. I'm like, I had finally come to terms with like maybe KCP's gone. Like he's probably gone, especially because he opted out and it was early, like it's 2 days before he really had to. So he probably has an idea of where he's going to go. I think it's probably going to be the Magic. By the time this episode airs, it's probably going to be something else totally different, right? Which just makes me think about the team's cap situation a little bit differently. And we get the Jamal news at the same time. So I'm thinking, okay, we're extending our core, we're trusting our guys, and we're going to figure out the stuff around them. But then we get the Reggie news, and that totally shifts my opinion of like, what exactly is the plan here?
Yeah, exactly.
But I am happy about the extension. I don't like the idea of going into another offseason where there is anything near this level of uncertainty. And really, it's just one player that could have and probably will walk this summer, and it's KCP. Obviously, we're losing Reggie, but that was like a team decision, right? So after kind of going through that, I'm like, you know what? I don't want to deal with anything near this, and it would be way worse going into the summer with Jamal next year, depending on however next season goes, whether we win a championship or not, just because of all of these financial questions that are suddenly coming up.
Yeah, you can't not offer it to him, especially after you had the comments you did where you were talking about his off-season conditioning, like Booth was saying, where he was like talking about he needs to look at people's routines in the off-season. Like, imagine him saying that and then not offering an extension. That's like some weird management stuff. And Jamal is a champion. He's an NBA player. He's one of the best in the league. You don't want to treat your stars like that.
The last thing I'll say on this is that I find it interesting that even you said, like, well, they've got to pay him XYZ, because I think that a lot of people thought under this new CBA that teams would be a little bit more
Reserved.
like, let's say, yeah, reserved, conservative, stingy with the way that they're doling out these max contracts in particular, because they are the ones that take up the most of the salary cap, right? But we saw Scotty Barnes got his rookie max extension. We saw a bunch of rookie max extensions even last summer after the CBA came into effect. And I don't expect those to stop. I think Cade Cunningham is expected to sign a max extension. Is he eligible? He might not be eligible this summer, but if he is, I'm sure Detroit's going to offer it, because I'm sure Cade would leave at the first opportunity if he didn't have a reason not to. I think the teams are just going to keep paying their top guys.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really these, like, we're seeing it with KCP, like, you're going to be the casualty if we're bumping up against this second apron or the luxury tax or whatever it is, right? Not our like stars. The stars still are going to get what they get because they theoretically provide outsized value relative to even those max contracts. That's absolutely the case with Jokic, and most of the time, at least in the playoffs, it's the case with Jamal. Though again, we've talked about the regular season stuff, so I won't harp on that. And I just find that dynamic interesting because we're still sort of learning about how this new CBA is going to change the behaviors of both players and teams when it comes to free agency, contract extensions, role player contract extensions versus like franchise superstar contract extensions, etc. So I just wanted to say that, but I'm really happy for Jamal. I'm happy for the Nuggets that they worked this out, and it's going to become official in all likelihood from all the reports on July 6th. I believe that's going to be before Team Canada's first preparation game before the Olympics, in which they face Team USA. So that's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, I just want Jamal for a long time, and I still believe in him. And I think he's going to have a good season next season. Oh, also, breaking news. I just saw that the Nuggets just signed Jalen Williams.
So it's actually, I saw that too. It's not a two-way deal. It's an Exhibit 10. I think that lets them basically be part of training camp. I think he'll probably be on the summer league team as well. And then I think it gives the Nuggets the option of converting it to a two-way contract. Like before preseason or something like that. So they'll have like basically first rights to get him on a two-way now that he's on this Exhibit 10 deal, which is cool.
Yeah.
We didn't really do anything with our Exhibit 10s last summer, so maybe this will be more interesting and more interesting a year. You talked about Trey Alexander already. Oh, we didn't talk about PJ Hall. I wanted to talk a little bit about PJ Hall because I found that interesting. The word on the street is that PJ Hall, who was signed to a two-way contract by the Nuggets, he's coming from Clemson. He was a teammate of Hunter Tyson when he was at Clemson. I saw a lot of PJ Hall just on the film when I was looking
Yeah.
through the Hunter Tyson scouting stuff last year. I really like him. He's a center. I'm not sure about him like necessarily at the NBA level. I'm not necessarily sure about him on the Nuggets. I just found it interesting that they took Hunter's former teammate on this two-way. Apparently, again, like the word on the street was that they had like a first round grade on him. I don't know. That's interesting. I didn't even know that he was in the draft this year.
Yeah.
Is this like a vibes boost for Hunter Tyson, who didn't really have a, not that he didn't have he didn't have a bad season. He just didn't really play. He played a lot in the G League. And he seems kind of like quiet and timid, which is interesting. And he's not really like a assert himself kind of player. He plays off ball, all that stuff. So that makes sense. He's a role player. He's end of the bench. But there was an instance last season, and maybe you'll remember this, Will, where we played the Chicago Bulls and Torrey Gregg got all up in Will's face. I don't know if there was something there because of some like school rivalries or whatever. They got double text for it. And I was pretty just like shocked at the incident because Hunter was a rookie who had basically not said more than 2 words like to the media at that point. And he's not like a troublemaker on the court. He just like plays hard. But Torrey kind of got up in his face, was kind of, I think he fouled him out on the perimeter, and then they both like got into like a little like something where they're just kind of like chesting each other up and like, you know, who's gonna be like the tough guy here, blah blah blah. And like Hunter didn't back down. And I was like, oh, I'd like to see that spark again. Again, he didn't get a lot of minutes in the NBA this season, so we didn't really get to see that. I wonder if just having his former teammate on the bench kind of gives him a little bit more confidence. I don't want like weird like cliques or anything to form on the team, but it is nice when everybody like has their guy at least that's there too. And hopefully, you know, we get DeAndre Jordan back to be our like elder statesman glue guy to make sure that the team stays all you know good, because the question about the locker room vibe was not something that I really took seriously until
the end of the
playoffs.
Season. Yeah, same. And there was some substance to some of that speculation. Like at first I thought it was ridiculous talking about losing Ish Smith and talking about losing Jeff Green and such. Obviously the players love them. You never want to lose players that you have good relationships with. And I just wouldn't think that the Nuggets leadership would ever be coming into question. But people commented about that with like Bruce Brown, like he brought the energy. But I think it was just more, you know, there just wasn't as much excitement because it was just the same dudes. Like there wasn't anyone bringing something new to the table really with the team. So it would be cool to get some new guys. Right now we're bleeding players. We'll bring in some new draft players, but I don't know what
bleeding vets.
Yeah, I don't know what new players we're going to bring in to spice some things up and spark new energy, but hopefully there's someone in the pipeline. As hard as it is, I don't see like Tyson and DeAndre Jordan and them even being on the team, but maybe we're just stuck with these guys. We're stuck with Zeke
Calvin
and them.
was asked specifically about, I don't remember if he was asked specifically about DJ and Justin Holiday, but he did bring them up in the post-draft comments. So the question was about free agency either way. And it sounded like, at least with DJ for sure, but I think also Justin Holiday is somebody that they would like to bring back. And Cal said something like tough decisions are going to have to be made. And we're finding out today, apparently Reggie's a casualty of that. But it seems like, because Booth said, I said DeAndre in particular because he compared him to the Udonis Haslem sort of role. So it seems like they do want to bring him back to just be that like absolute back of the bench guy, play that role. And I would like to have him back, frankly, because especially if we're losing Reggie, I don't want, as much as I want Jokic and Jamal especially, but AG and, you know, as MPJ also sort of ages into his prime in the NBA and matures to take on more of that leadership role. There is something to be said for that, like the super old dudes doing that, the ones that don't have quite as much of that playing burden on top of sort of trying to keep everybody together emotionally burden. And I don't want to lose that on top of, well, we've already lost Reggie, who we had for the last 2 years, again, including the championship run. And a lot of people talked about how good he was for the locker room that year. So that's going to be a loss. And I like Justin Holiday just as a player. I just like him as a...
Yeah, I like him too.
spot starter, like fill in, whatever. And I thought he was just good in the playoffs. Frankly, like I don't think you could ask for much more from a minimum guy than what he gave us, which was like starting, like not starting, but coming off the bench, part of the rotation, gave us a lot of good shooting through several games. Right? He had some bad shooting games too, but he's a role player, like whatever. He had some excellent shooting games as well. And he's a good vibes guy and all of that too. So
I'd be completely fine keeping Holiday. Like I'd be happy to bring him back. I like DJ for his leadership and I love him as a person. I wouldn't care that much if we lost him, to be honest. But I guess that would depend on the fact that we'd get another vet center who could play more.
Yes, for sure.
So,
for sure. And I have no idea what the plan is on that front now.
Exactly.
None whatsoever.
And it would suck to have to move on from like Tyson and even Pickett. As much as like I'd be okay with it, I would want to see them at least. Like, what if they turn into serviceable role players? But
what if we win another championship
with them, or just without? Like without them?
No, like what if we won another championship? Like, what do you want to see more? You want to see Hunter and Pickett turn into serviceable role players, or you want to win another championship?
Yeah, no, I want to win the championship.
Okay.
You want to get rid of the players like Reggie and Zeke that we know maybe not gonna fit.
We know what they are.
But that's harder to do. Obviously, it's easier to be like, hey, take Hunter Tyson because like he is a good shot, and it's just the reality of the situation. It's tough to have this many guys in this new CBA, and we have an expensive roster. Very, very tough. But speaking of, because you mentioned cliques in the Clemson boys, let's go to some other news around the NBA because the biggest clique of them all just got even clickier.
The clique is the whole damn basketball team.
Yeah, they just have a full Villanova college team.
The New York Knicks have become Villanova North, I guess.
Yeah.
Villanova's in Philly. They traded for Mikal Bridges. They traded 5 first-round picks for Mikal Bridges along with Bojan Bogdanovic. This trade absolutely just like froze my entire evening and a half because I stayed up way too late learning more about the deal and all this stuff, especially because really even to this point it's not fully ironed out because of some intricacies we could get into. But what was your reaction when you read this? Because you were at dinner when this news dropped, were you not?
Dang, I can't remember where I was specifically.
I think I was because it was like an hour and you hadn't read my messages and I'm like, Phil, check Twitter right now.
Yeah, that's what I was. Yeah, I was like 40 minutes behind the announcement for sure. But my reaction was just like laughter. I was just like, wow.
Bridges it was crazy.
He's rejoining his dudes. Like all the memes of him outside the window and it's like raining. He's depressed looking at the Knicks, having a great time. That's done
the because SpongeBob meme where it's like Squidward watching SpongeBob and Patrick play together out the window. It's like Mikhail in Brooklyn.
Those are over now. They're a happy family. And it's like, it makes sense too. It's not like it's some stupid idea to put these dudes together. Like how can you not use Bridges? I mean, he can fit into pretty much any roster.
Some people are actually speculating that they did this as like a way to convince Brunson to take like maybe the most hometown deal that I've ever seen, because it's more for more than a year where let me double check this. I think he becomes extension eligible this summer and he could sign like a 3 year something or other. But he's not a max player right now. So the fact that he made All NBA and was an MVP candidate, all of that wouldn't factor into his supermax eligibility because it's not built into his current contract. It's not a max contract. So the kind of deal that he would take if he took a max, or not a max extension, but an extension this summer and took as much as the Knicks are able to kind of give him a raise off of his current contract, would be a massive discount compared to what he could make if he waited until next summer, which the Knicks would absolutely pay whatever it was because he is their franchise star. But that would be, they think that they brought Mikhail in as like a way to show their commitment to him and like all of that. And it's like, would you please like take a discount for the team?
Yeah, because you're not taking money away from teammates. You're taking money away from your friends.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because my first reaction to this trade, well, okay, first it was the Woj bomb, and I checked it because when I saw that it was 4 of the Knicks first round picks, I was like, there's just no way that a team traded 4 first round picks for Mikhail, even though I know the Knicks love their Villanova Wildcats. So I had to check the Woj account, see if it was the real one. Clicked. I was like, okay, 6 million followers. This is real. Then I read the whole tweet, and it's like those 4 plus another first round pick and some second round picks and some pick swaps.
Yeah.
That was my first reaction. My next reaction was, does this mean OG is gone? Because
Oh, yeah.
OG Anunoby had not yet signed his contract extension. And I believe he didn't for another 2 days, 3 days after this news.
Was it that
So
long? I thought it was like so quick after that,
was it
but you might be
yesterday or the
right.
day before? No, it was at least 2 days. So I don't think they needed to pay that much for Mikhail, except that it was the Brooklyn Nets who apparently just wanted to hold him hostage forever and try to like build around him or whatever. Eventually, Brooklyn, I think, does this deal because they rope in the Houston Rockets as a third team to trade Brooklyn their picks back. But that's the reason Brooklyn ends up doing this deal, in addition to the fact that the Knicks way overpaid, in my opinion. But yeah, they have like the vibes have literally never been higher on a basketball team that has not won a championship than the Villanova Wildcats, like Wildcats North. All they're missing now is Colin Gillespie. And there were also rumors that they're trying to get Kyle Lowry to come on a vet minimum, who's also
Wow.
a
The
Villanova
Philly
Wildcat.
boy. Yes.
But Kyle Lowry was not part of the
Yeah.
championship, the 2-time championship team
Yeah.
that Brunson and I believe Mikhail was also
Mhm.
there for
Yep.
both of those championships, at least one, and
Yeah, at
and
least
Dante,
one.
right, and Josh Hart, of course.
I guess I'm happy for them. They're in the East. Like, I'm always for East players getting better. At least Bridges didn't go some West team. So I'm
Yeah,
mostly just like, cool.
good
Like,
point.
I'll see how it goes. Happy for them. I'm frankly fine overpaying if it's for a player like Bridges. I'm less so for like,
Overpaying by 3 first-round draft picks, in my opinion,
yes, I'm fine doing it. You
if you're the
screw the
Knicks.
picks. Yeah, if I'm the
If
Knicks.
you're the Knicks, okay,
Yeah.
sure. Because
Yeah.
you know why you're okay doing that is because Brunson is making about half of what he
hmm
should.
That is definitely a nice perk.
And because his contract is cheap, Mikhail's is, so that
Yeah.
helps.
I don't think like it makes them the heavy favorite to like win it all next season, but they're going to be in the mix and they're not done obviously. Like we still don't know about Hartenstein and other like types of moves. But I mean OG coming back was big for them. If they lost him, I probably would have thought it was worse.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
you know, the Knicks are right there. They're going to be fun. I love a Boston New York rivalry. I mean, the Suns, I always thought made a huge mistake trading Bridges, which they're still in the middle of trying to figure that out.
But Mikal Bridges only gets you 6 first-round draft picks. Kevin Durant nets you like 9 first-round draft picks, apparently, because he can get you Mikal Bridges and all of the first-round draft picks
Yeah,
that came with him.
the young potential.
Oh my gosh. I won't get too much into the intricacies of the way that New York structured this deal because, again, it's still being ironed out. But the way
hmm
that they did it, the way it's going to end up probably is going to hard cap them at the first apron, which does make it more difficult to bring back Hartenstein. In my opinion, I don't actually see them as a championship caliber team without him because of how important he was for them on especially offensively. I think you could like replace the defense with Mitchell Robinson for the most part. The versatility of having both of those guys in the roster helps, but it's going to be difficult to keep iHeart with all of the other teams that are interested in him, especially the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of his preference and what he's thinking, and obviously the offers that are out there. I think there's a world where they keep him, and the Knicks can even be under the second apron, which is insane to think about. If that happens, then Leon Rose is going to win GM of the Year next year. So, as he should have last year instead of Brad Stevens. No, I'm kidding.
Well,
They
Brad
won the
Stevens,
championship, so
do
he
you think
deserved
that
it.
Brad Stevens should win Executive of the Year, or do you think that what Jason Tatum should be Finals MVP?
I think that Brad Stevens should not have won, and Jalen Brown.
Well, he is the
No,
Finals
okay,
MVP.
exactly.
All right.
No, yeah. Let's go to some draft stuff.
Well, I think he drafted him, so
Mm,
just saying, paying off long term. You talked about that, how Executive of the Year
yeah.
doesn't pay
No,
off longer term moves like
obviously they
drafting.
deserve it, especially for not trading Jalen Brown. That is looking very good because there was a lot of discussions
Yes.
around that.
So let's talk about the NBA draft when it comes to other teams. I thought that the first round in particular was very interesting because we saw some trends. We saw some trends, especially in the West, where a lot of teams were just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Can you tell me why the Atlanta Hawks didn't just take Donovan Clingan at 1?
Because they're basically going to be rebuilding, is what I'm thinking.
Are they?
Not like,
Are they?
not
The
total
Atlanta
teardown.
Hawks?
Not total teardown, but like, I mean, Trey's being, there's rumors flying around that whole
But
team.
they haven't done anything.
Yeah, they still can do it though, but I think it's just
And if
like,
they're gonna rebuild, why not get like the best player that's available in the top 10? You have a number 1 pick. They used it. They did
yeah.
use the number 1 pick.
So
It's
you would
not like
say
they traded
Klingan
it.
was the best player in the top 10? He should have been the number 1?
I think that Clingan was the best player in the top 10.
Not Sar?
You could say Sar was close, but Atlanta was never going to take Sar because Sar didn't want to work out with them. So you could say the second best player in the top 10, whatever.
Yeah, okay.
Because they didn't take Sar
really
either.
fell.
They have the number 1 pick. They didn't do that, right? Because he didn't work out with them. Clingan did.
Yeah.
And the reports were that the coaching staff loved him.
It was just like so unclear. There wasn't the clear number 1 that everyone wanted that you just have to take, like no matter what, in that
I
position
do think
this
Sar
year,
was a
which kind of sucks.
consensus number 1, though.
Yeah.
But he didn't want to go to Atlanta. So then Atlanta's like, okay.
Risha, I think it's just like the safe. I mean, if they can't get Sar, he's just like a safe role player. And if they stay the same, they can use him. If they radically change it up, they can still kind of use him. So that's my best guess for why they went that direction.
So Donovan Clingan ended up falling all the way down to Portland, I believe, at 7. And there were all these rumors about Memphis wanting to trade up. Maybe the Rockets would be interested in Clingan at 3, but they ended up taking Reed Shepherd. But yeah, the Trailblazers got to just stay at 7 and pick Clingan, and that was good for them, I think, because I think Clingan's just a good player. But now they have a bunch of centers on that team. As I told you pre-show, like it's really funny. They were not that they're a good team this year. They were not. But the year before, they were like 29th on defense, and their center rotation was Yusuf Nurkic and Drew Eubanks. Now they're about to have Donovan Clingan, who I think was the best player in the top 10 in the draft. In terms of like day 1, he's going to be playing like he could win Rookie of the Year. No one's talking about Rookie of the Year. Last draft, everyone was talking about Rookie of the Year. Oh my God, is it going to be Scoot? Is it going to be Wemby? Is Wemby going to be too raw? And then we saw Scoot and we're like, oops, never mind. It's probably going to be Wemby. But is it going to be Chet? Because he's coming back. No one's talking about Rookie of the Year. And I think Donovan Clingan's going to win Rookie of the Year because he's the best player in the top 10. And he like when he steps onto an NBA floor, he's going to be the best player for at least the first couple of years is what I meant by that, by the way. I don't think he has like necessarily the best upside, although I don't really believe too much in the upside of like the rest of the guys in the top 10. I think they're
it's
good.
so hard to know. Like anything can happen, really. So it's like, yeah, I see what you mean. Like what we do know, he does seem pretty serviceable to come in and be like, yeah, the really Rookie of the Year, impactful.
Really good defensive player.
Yeah.
And he can catch lobs.
Of course, he's in the West. Yeah, there was all kinds of people like even Edie's on the Grizzlies. Sadly, all these players we didn't want to come, even if they end up not being as good as, some people may say. These are like highly talked about players, and they all came to the West, of course.
Yeah, and I'm just glad that Clingan didn't end up in the Grizzlies because I do think he would have made them a lot better. Edie is there, and he does help them. But I think Clingan's a better player.
Yeah, they almost got him.
The NBA. Thankfully, he ended up on a tanking team. But that also means we don't get 4 free wins against Portland necessarily. Because you can't just, Jokic can't just bully whoever. Yeah, so that was interesting. We talked about the rumors of Hartenstein to OKC. I was like, maybe they're going to take like a bigger, like power forward in the draft, right? I don't expect them to take one of these centers. None of the centers are really like the level of pass, dribble, shoot guy that Chet was, which is why they really, really wanted him and that kind of thing. I still think that they would remain committed to their play style. But I thought maybe they'll take one of these bigger wings, try to make them a power forward, whatever. We get to OKC's pick, and they choose Nikola Topic, who I like a lot, actually. And the fact that he slid in the draft was due like exclusively to his recent ACL tear. He's going to be out probably all of the first year. Pretty similar to like Chet's story, right? He gets the Liz Frank thing and then can't play for a year. Redshirt rookie. Taking a redshirt rookie with your mid first round pick for a team that is as competitive as OKC is just interesting on its face. But when you look at the questions that everybody had of like, is OKC going to make some big changes? Are they going to try to get a little bit bigger? And we thought, again, because of the Hartenstein rumors, and those might be true and they might end up getting him. But when it comes to how they draft and how they fill out the rest of their roster, unless you're that like, I think Hartenstein is almost as close to like a perfect fit for someone that isn't quite Chet, just because of how versatile Hartenstein happens to be offensively. He can't necessarily shoot or dribble, but he can be a good hub, that kind of thing. He's a very smart player off the ball. Unless you're that level, OKC is not going to pursue you, and they are going to fall all the way back to drafting effectively wings and guards to keep playing in their very wing and guard heavy system that requires everybody on the floor to have this really high level of processing. And I just think it's interesting because everyone thought that they were, when I say everyone, I mean not me, thought that they were going to make some changes based on how the playoffs went, and different people have different ideas about what the specific main problem areas OKC needed to address are. But this pick at Topic was not addressing any one of those points that have been brought up. Whether, in my case, I think that they need like a bigger, more athletic slasher, more decisive scorer who's a big athletic type scorer. I actually think that, like, secondarily, that someone like a Lauri Markkanen that could play the 4 or the 5, but also pass, dribble, shoot, like that, like perfect fit for OKC would be absolutely scary if
Yeah.
they got him. But Topic doesn't address any of the things that people thought. What do you think about that for a team that is like this good, this young?
They have a long runway ahead of them to contend, and there's no immediate need to just rush into it. I do think there's something to Chet being one of the bigs and like not having too many around him, because like just trying to get size when it's like Chet is playing most of the time. I can kind of see that, but they did have those specific weaknesses like you're talking about, where you'd think after what we just saw in the postseason, they'd go out and really prioritize that and get a vet big and draft like a big. Do something like that maybe. Even if they're getting Hartenstein, draft someone too, just to like have, because you have depth in other positions on that team. But I'm not sure why Topic, whether they just thought that was the best player available at the time until they took him, regardless of like the fit or whatever, or if they have a specific something in mind with him, with the roster and everything, or if it's just another future play, like, hey, this guy's going to be good down the line, like let's just get him now, in a year or two, like even with the players that we have even more developed, he can play then. So we'll see. Definitely curious, but I don't like hate it either. But I mostly just don't want them to get Hartenstein or just like get these big dudes who are gonna like come in and make life harder for us if we have to play them or something along those lines. So
If they got him, then every team in the Northwest Division would have one of the best rim protectors in the entire NBA, and we'd have to play them 16 total times in the season.
yeah, my God.
Or
So that would
Nuggets,
be
when you
so.
see all these teams loading up against you, especially in your division.
Were you that frustrated with the Topic pick that you would
No, I
put it
wasn't
in this?
frustrated. If it was like a rebuilding team, then like whatever. Even if
Yeah,
it was a rebuilding team with it's like some specific hole, like whatever. But OKC is like in the position where they could compete to win the conference, to win a championship. So I don't really see how the Topic thing helps them, except as like we have another Giddy replacement. So
hmm
I don't know how much impetus there is internally in that organization to make big sweeping changes outside of continuing their internal development pipeline. Maybe the plan is to go as micro as possible, basically, and then move Case and Wallace to the starting lineup. But I just find that interesting. They're holding fast. And another team that's doing the same thing is the Spurs. Not necessarily like going big or not. I don't necessarily need to comment on their specific draft picks, but they do not seem like an organization that is in any rush to do anything soon to improve dramatically, especially with, I think a lot of the tanking teams want to do it again next year because next year is the Cooper Flag draft. 2025 is a lot more vaunted than this year's was. But I think the Spurs in particular, they made one move, which maybe semi affected us, that made me think like, oh, they're playing like the long, long game. Like the Spurs do not give a single fig about what all of these NBA commentators are saying about how, Wemby's going to put so much pressure on this organization to be good right away. They traded the rights to the 8th overall pick, which they picked Rob Dillingham for the Minnesota Timberwolves for a future pick and a pick swap, I believe it was, with the Timberwolves. That's the thing is like, okay, when maybe a team that's trying to improve would use that as leverage to get something else that would help them, like a good player or whatever. Nope, they didn't do that. They got some like way off into the future first round picks. They're playing the longest possible game. And then I looked at the timeline. The times when they have all these picks are actually like right in the beginning of Wemby's prime. Like he's going to be 26 because I checked it again. I'm like, oh, he's only 20. Like,
Yeah.
who cares if they're bad right now? There's a difference between trying to, play good competitive basketball and rushing the developmental timeline, not just of Wemby, but of the team. Like, you don't want to just add pieces to add pieces. Like, you want to find the right fits around Wemby. So that was just another thing I wanted to note. And I mean, do you want to comment on the fact that the Wolves picked Rob Dillingham?
Just hope he's a bust and that he's too small to play. But I mean, everyone's like super high on it and excited for them. And TC is a basketball genius because of that move, which made me want to throw up. And I'm just like, so, even like the rumors of Connolly wanting to pick DaRon right before the Nuggets, I'm just, I wasn't on the Wolves were specifically designed for the Nuggets train as much as other people, but now I feel like he is just obsessed with the Nuggets and he just wants to stick it to us for not giving him equity in the franchise or some shit. But no, like in all seriousness, like Conley, we saw how the offense kind of struggled not having a creator. With Ant on the floor without Conley, things could kind of slow down. So to get a player like that, I think everyone's really excited about in Minnesota just because it opens it up more for them. So people are looking at it as a slam dunk. So we'll see. He's a really good creator, and that's what they want.
I will say it is scary to be in a position where I have to root against a Kentucky guard's NBA
I know, right?
career.
Just draft the Kentucky guard and you're
I
golden.
know.
That's kind of
Like,
how it
man,
looks.
I thought the Spurs would just keep him. Like they could use some perimeter creation around Wemby, like some solid. Yeah, solid enough, whatever. Like he is small, right? And he might not be able to play nearly at the level that he did in college at the NBA level because of the size. And once you become inefficient, like that just scales everything down because there are also the defensive concerns, right? So you have to play at a high level offensively to, to balance that.
Yeah.
So I don't
But
know.
it's just the timeline's a little bit weird. And I feel like people aren't being as critical of that. Like they're like, wow, what a steal. Good job to trade up and get him. Be aggressive because that's what you guys need. It's kind of like it's different than OKC where it's like we're kind of criticizing OKC for not getting the specific need. Minnesota went out and did that, but I think it's harder to like get the need that's like the creator. Like you're gonna bring in a dude right away and he's gonna help your offense. Like that's
Yeah.
such a
Yeah.
harder skill than to just like fill in big guys.
Yeah.
At least
And
to me.
they're limited too because they are actually, I think at current, they're the second most expensive team in the NBA. I do think I'm a lot more critical of the Dillingham pick. So look, the Spurs basically gifted the Wolves another bite at the apple. They have to give up some stuff in the future, but it does not affect them now. They got to pick again in the first round, and they chose Terrence Shannon Jr., who we talked about with Zamora. He's like a really good like transition scoring wing, basically. But I wouldn't call him a shot creator. And the Wolves are a good transition offense team. So it's not like they're filling a need with that. I think that was more a case of like they think they're taking the best available player. But I think they should have just taken Isaiah Collier at 27, who had fallen that far. And instead the Utah Jazz got him. And I actually think the Utah Jazz won this whole draft. They had three, I think, pretty awesome picks. Getting Collier at 28, and then they got Filipowski at 32, I think they were choosing. Kind of crazy. And I think Collier was the best. I think had the best chance of any of the guards in the first round to be like an NBA level creator, even if he's not like like a 1A, like whatever that means, right? I think he's going to be able to play right away, finishes through contact, and he's incredibly crafty as well. I just really like Collier, and I was shocked that they didn't take, because I thought, oh man, they're going to get Dillingham, who I don't think is going to pan out at the level that they want. But then they're going to get to take Collier probably, because I didn't see any of the teams ahead of, say, like between where we picked and the Wolves taking him, because they don't really need creation. But then they didn't take Collier. And I was like, what? That's crazy. That's exactly what you need. All of the Wolves kind of pre-draft podcasts also were really high on Collier and that particular or that potential at the time.
Apparently, the whole league had some memo that Collier should be slipping.
But they could get 2 bites at the creation apple and seeing which one actually pans out. These
I
are
don't know.
rookies. Like,
I think you got to pick one of them.
and he's 6 feet tall.
I think you got to pick one or the other and just go with that. I would.
Oh my god, that's crazy. No way.
Maybe they either pick Collier early or wait, let him fall to them and pick him.
Like, you could just play them in summer league in preseason, and whoever's bad you trade, because both of them have first round value, and then you could like get whatever. Because most of the time you're not getting a number 8 pick in the first round and 27 with the opportunity to pick somebody that has top 10 value. That doesn't normally happen. Whereas they have the opportunity to have both of these great guys, and then they didn't pick the second one, who in my opinion was better than the first. But
well, they wanted that Terrence Shannon Jr. Not that he's a bad player, but not that he's bad, but yeah, I don't know.
No, he's fine. They got good picks. It was just their
the
draft
Collier
wasn't
one's
bad.
just weird. Like, I've seen people say that the Jazz are losers for picking Collier. That was a bad pick. I saw them say that they were the supreme winners, that he should have gone in the top 10.
Yes.
I don't know what is going on with this pick and why he fell so far. Because I know we talked about if he was slipping that far, the Nuggets could possibly take him, but we traded up.
I absolutely was like, actually, I'd be a little bit conflicted if he slipped and DaRon was still available. I think I'd still want DaRon first, just because of the need, but we kind of needed both.
Yeah, now we need both.
But I'd be like, man, I really wish we could like trade to get a second pick in this first round. That would have been awesome. Yeah, and I absolutely would have picked for Collier like right away if that was an option. But apparently Tim Conley disagrees. So the last thing I wanted to add, just like to add to the big point, is that Zamora's picks, Quentin Post, he got drafted, I think, by just because of the way that picks were changing hands during the second round today. Got drafted by, like, I think the Thunder, and then they traded him to the Golden State Warriors. So his big man, Quentin Post, he gets drafted. He's going to Golden State. It's interesting because I kind of see him as like it definitely means that Dario Saric is not going to be returning there, because I kind of see him as like younger Saric who's a bit bigger, and like, again, younger, so like a bit more athletic, but they operate in similar ways, especially offensively. So they're also getting bigger. Everybody's getting bigger.
Man.
So, yeah, I don't know. That was interesting.
We haven't talked about Knecht. He went to the Lakers. Phillies didn't pick him.
That was dumb, by the way. Philly absolutely should have picked Knecht. They chose, was it Jared McCain, the second, who's just another small guard who's not going to really play next to Maxey a ton. There's this thing with Philly that I've felt ever since I watched them in the playoffs in 23, where I'm like, oh, they don't have any like really good wing defenders. Like, D'Anthony Melton was their best POA guy, and he's like small, and they didn't have them again this year. And I don't know what they're going to do with all this cap space they have. Like, maybe they do sign KCP, whatever, but even if they have him, they're not a good perimeter defense against any like really athletic NBA players, and I don't know what they're doing to actually address that. Not that Knecht would have addressed that, but the fact that they took McCain sort of augmented the issue in my mind. Is like, why are they have other small guards that are like good and that they drafted already and that can play next to Maxey a little bit, that are like smaller or small guards, but they're a little bit bigger than McCain. I don't know. So I don't know what they're doing. They're just like, we're just drafting for upside, blah, blah, blah.
Daryl Morey really loves his TikTok game. He's just McCain's #1 fan, apparently.
He clearly didn't find a trade that they could do by draft night, because I don't think they would have made their pick. They had kind of telegraphed ahead of the draft that they would be looking at all kinds of options to use their cap space, right? Because they could trade players into the cap space too. But because they don't have assets, because none of their players are signed right now, they have to include draft capital in any kind of deal to get like a good player, probably. Clearly, they didn't find one because they used their pick and they used it on McCain. I think Knecht would have been a better pick just because, if nothing else, he's going to be ready to contribute to an NBA rotation way more likely than, outside of Clingan, anybody in the top 20. Clingan or Sar, in my opinion. That's kind of dumb because they need role players. They don't have
Yeah,
anybody
just
signed to their
get.
roster right now besides Embiid and Maxey. That's just the fact of the matter.
I think he would have been a good pick too, and I think a lot of Sixers fans were probably not happy about that. Just take him; he's right there. I bet the Suns are pretty happy about Ryan Dunn, though. I have to say.
Because they need some kind of perimeter defense, but like I don't. The problem with that team is not that they haven't been able to find like at least solid enough, like impactful defensive players in the past, but they've been one-way players, and I just think Ryan Dunn is that again, frankly. That's why I didn't really like it when people were suggesting him for the Nuggets. I'm like, we have defensive wings that need
Yeah,
to polish their offensive game already. That's
right.
not.
But the Suns, they
Yeah.
feel they need to shore up the defense a bit, so they went for that.
The other thing with Phoenix, which was very nice to see, was that the Knicks took Tyler Kolek, who had been, I guess, rumored to be like a favorite of the Phoenix Suns. We thought maybe they'd take him at 22, maybe they trade back and take him there. But the Knicks preempted them, it seems like, because I think that it was still, the idea was that they were going to take Kolek early in the second round, the Suns were, but the Knicks traded into the second round and took Kolek. And I joked that, they played TJ McConnell in round 2 when they played Indiana and decided we need to go get us one of those, because that's my favorite comp for Kolek is McConnell. He kind of plays with that, not manic energy, but he's kind of
Hustler.
a maniac on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah, constantly hustler. You're like, man, this kid's motor is crazy. And he also has that really like veteran pace in pick and roll. He can play off the ball, all of that good stuff. Only reason I was low on the Nuggets going after him is like, not that they were, but if they were going to get him, was just the size. But I think he could be good, especially off the bench for another team, and maybe exactly what the Knicks are looking for.
I don't know how many other picks you want to like go over. We're kind of bouncing around, which is cool. There's so much to take in. How do you possibly cover it all?
We're just like processing this. I'm like
but
monitoring the timeline to make sure no other big news happens, because a lot of like just micro trades that could have bigger implications have been happening all day.
the only like Anton Watson from Gonzaga is the late pick, went to the Celtics. I was kind of upset about that just because the Celtics are already good. I think he has a lot of potential. I'm like, dang, they're already getting another forward who's just like a wing who can do stuff for them. So I'm a little concerned about that. Not that he's going to be like some massive contributor next year, but I think he has potential. We didn't talk about Bronny going to the Lakers at all. That's a fun.
Bronny went to the Lakers.
That's just very
Bronny's
funny.
agent, Rich Paul, was on what, like ESPN, like whatever the main broadcast was, talking about, or no, it was reported that he was calling agents or calling teams and telling them that if they chose Bronny, that Bronny was going to go play in Australia because they didn't want anybody besides the Lakers to draft him. So that was a thing. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, I just kind of feel bad for the kid because it's just like been this whole debacle all year. He's not really like ready to be an NBA player. And who knows if he ever would have been, but maybe it would have been nice to like stay in school a while, just kind of build your brand there and then come be famous in the NBA like you would have been anyway.
I just hope, I mean, it's cool for him if he can play with his dad on an NBA team. I don't know what his personal feelings on it. It seems like they have a good relationship. So I'm like excited just to see it. It's going to be cool, going to be historic. But if he like is, not NBA standards, which seems like that could be likely, I definitely feel bad for him. It's like he's just being set up to fail. You're just kind of like this showpiece for LeBron at the end of the day. That's like the worst case scenario. I hope it doesn't end up like that, but we'll see.
The thing is, whatever it takes to get the $1 billion inheritance. If you have to be
just
daddy's
building up that
showpiece,
brand,
then that's what you got to do.
That's what you got to do. Oh, we didn't talk about the Magic getting Tristan da Silva from Colorado. Did you have any strong feelings about that as the Magic fan and person? Obviously, our worlds are colliding.
I thought it was an interesting pick. He's like the way that I view De Silva as just like this kind of Swiss Army knife type of wing, not quite like a Bruce Brown, but like in that way where he can just kind of like fill in all of those gaps on any given team. So I wasn't like shocked or anything to see him go to Orlando. It was just one of those things where I had no idea which team would take him because any team could have. I think it's a fine pick. I just don't know if he's actually going to play because even the players that they've taken to have more sort of specialized skills that are like really really good at like a thing got trouble getting consistent playing time last year, especially as they became this really really good competitive basketball team that almost won a playoff series last year. So they might run an even tighter ship next year. I don't know. But yeah, I have no problems with the pick. My issues with the Magic and free or more in free agency. Like I need them to go after a veteran point guard, and it doesn't even seem like that is something that is on their priority list.
By the next time we record, maybe KCP will be on the Magic or the Sixers or the Nuggets, hopefully. So we will.
He's currently nowhere. That's right, because he opted out. So in our next episode, we are going to do our post-draft reaction with CT Fazio. We had to do a little bit of rescheduling. But he's going to go over all of the Nuggets draft picks with us, what they did with their two-way contracts and getting these undrafted guys. And we're going to dig a little bit more into the prospects that we didn't talk about. I know CT also has some thoughts about Vlatko, and it's likely that he's going to return on a minimum deal. So it'll be interesting to dig into some of that stuff with him on our next episode. The off-season is stressful. And I'm not even on one of these teams. Constantly I'm not working on one of these teams.
Grace was recently on Locked On, which we didn't talk about. We should have done that. If you didn't watch that episode, go check her out there.
I did a sort of, I guess it was a debate, even though I was told it would not be a debate, with Matt Moore about why the Nuggets should keep KCP. Go listen to that as soon as you hear this, and maybe by the time this episode is out, it will be moot.
Hopefully not. Hopefully,
but right now it is very prescient, at least very relevant.
Yeah, so go check that out. We'll put it in the description. But that's it for today. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Rate us on Spotify or Apple. Oh, yeah, we're supposed to be on Apple Podcasts now, so we'll check on that.
Oh, yeah, we're on Apple Podcasts
Hopefully,
now.
if you're listening to that, we're on there. And Spotify, leave us a rating on Amazon Music, wherever. Thank you, and remember that winning is fun and losing sucks. So does losing 3 second round picks for nothing.